Hey guys, how you doing? Uh, I was actually supposed to say, isn't that a great movie? And then you're supposed to clap. But please, was that not an amazing movie? Did you guys love it? My name is Greg Elwood, and it is my pleasure to do this Q&A with you guys tonight for War Dogs. For everyone who is at Alamo Drafthouse theaters across the country, we're in 15 other theaters, and here, if you want to ask a question to our talent, please send the question with hashtag AskAlamo. Big hint, if you ask a Guardians of the Galaxy 2 question, we're not going to ask it. So just so you know, and he's not going to answer it anyway. But we're so excited to have you guys here and talk about this movie. Can you please welcome the director and the two producers and one of the stars of this film, Mr. Todd Phillips and Bradley Cooper.
Hello.
Hey.
Sure. Oh, it sounded like a lot more people were coming out. You said the director, two of the producers, and the star of the movie.
Well, you guys, that's what the first big story about this movie is. This is your first co-production as producers together. Is that correct?
Yeah, first film, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we met on the Hangover movies, and we became really fast friends and really close, and we discovered that we shared a lot of the same sensibilities of storytelling and our love for films and filmmaking. And over the course of time, we just decided to start working together. And yeah, War Dogs is the first movie out of, we have a little company at Warner Brothers called Joint Effort, and this is our first movie we produced together.
So how did the story come to you? Because I'm sort of curious with the audience here, too. I brought a friend of mine to see it when I saw it a couple weeks ago, and we're walking out, and he was like, oh, I remember that story. I remember seeing that on the news and wondering what that was. Yeah. Was it something where one of you guys had read the story in Rolling Stone, or how did it sort of come about?
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was literally flying to Bangkok. We were shooting Hangover 2, and I read it in Rolling Stone, just like anybody. And I just couldn't. The thing that attracted me was I couldn't believe it was real. Honestly, like it just felt like one of those. If it was a piece of fiction in the New Yorker, I would have said, "Oh, it's a cool story, cool characters, but it's so unbelievable, it kind of doesn't work." But the fact that it was a real story is the thing that kept drawing me in. And sometimes, you'll read an article and you think it makes a good movie, and you start unwinding the article and looking into it, and you go, you know what, this is better off as an article. This was meant to be an article. And with this film, the more we unpacked it and the more we looked into it, the more it just kept feeling like a film. It's just one of those things where truth is very often stranger than fiction, and it was just appealing to me on that level.
Bradley, when you found out about the story, was there anything that really surprised you that you just were like, this couldn't be true? Like this.
Oh my God, where do we start? I mean, the thing I liked most about it was I felt like if we do make it into a movie, the viewer really could live vicariously through these characters and think, well, actually, I guess that I could possibly do that, and how would I fare in those circumstances, which is very enticing. And the other thing that I just loved about it was, yes, all those things are true what you're saying, but the more you unearth it, the more you realize that it's just a great dynamic, it's a great relationship, it's a great exploration of this long-time friendship, or was it a friendship?
Because I'm assuming they're not friends anymore.
Right now, no. They're still involved in a lawsuit together. David is still suing Ephraim for money that he owes him and what have you. They still live in Miami. Ephraim is now out of jail. He was in jail while we were making the movie, or writing the movie and shooting the movie. He's now out. They don't even live that far away from each other, but they don't see each other, and they're still involved in a lawsuit.
But in 2020, they'll be refunctioning as AEY.
2022, right?
20.
So even after you read the article, and I'm assuming you guys sat down and met with David, correct?
I did not.
No, yeah, me and Jason Smilovic, who I wrote we had hired this guy Stephen Chin to do the first few passes of the draft, and then Jason Smilovic and I took over in the writing, and we had met with David a couple times, and he was really helpful, as was Guy Lawson, who wrote the original Rolling Stone article, and went on to write a book about this whole thing.
Was there anything that David told you that ended up getting into the movie that hadn't been in the article that you couldn't even believe when he sort of... Is there anything that we might think is Hollywood license in this movie that actually really isn't?
I mean, I don't like to walk through the movie of what exactly happened that way and what didn't, only because it's not a documentary by any means, but also it was a 5-page article that we turned into a 120-page screenplay. So obviously we took a lot of liberty and we added a lot of flourishes. And I will say, like, you know, one of the benefits about doing a movie like this, where, you know, we weren't making the Muhammad Ali story. In other words, everybody knows who Muhammad Ali is. They know how he talks. They know how he walks. We were really making a movie about two anonymous guys who did something extraordinary. And there was something really liberating about, and for the actors, I can speak for them, liberating about being able to come in and create a character. You know, Ephraim, our guys don't necessarily look like the real guys. Our guys don't necessarily walk like the real guys. And we had the freedom with that to tell that story kind of the way we wanted to, you know. But as far as what happens in the movie, you know, we did a press conference in New York last week, and Guy, who wrote the book and the article, was there, and somebody asked a similar question, and he said he was actually pleasantly surprised with the journalistic integrity of the film, like how close it really stuck to the story.
And Bradley, I'm curious, your character, I think, is a composite, correct? It's not one real person?
No.
And but was there someone who they were that fearful of, who was sort of involved with what was going on?
I could probably speak to that better than you, just sorry, but I mean, I don't know that you know.
Story of my life.
No, but I don't know that there was this guy, and his name was Henry, and he was a big part of it. It's a bit of a composite with another gentleman, but there was a guy, and his name was Henry. We changed his last name and changed facts about him, honestly, but that this is based on, for sure, yeah.
So what was your take
Can
on
I just say the genesis of it too? I think it's funny.
Yeah.
So I was doing Elephant Man, right?
Yeah.
And then we had a break before I was going to do it in London, and we talked about doing it, but the character's name was Henri.
Right. That's
And,
right.
and we were going to make him sort of Swiss or something, and I just didn't have enough time to like really do it right. I was like, I don't know, bro. I was like,
He's like, I don't know if I can get that accent down that fast.
so then we like created Henry. It was
Right.
like, you know, instead of Henri.
And that cleared it up for him.
But then, and it was just finding this guy, and by the end, I kind of fell in love with this guy Henry. Like, he's such a wacko.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
No, but it's funny how actors find certain ways into roles, you know, like with Jonah. I've worked with a lot of actors, and sometimes they'll find their way in through the wardrobe, or sometimes through a hairstyle, or sometimes a lot of those things. And I remember in rehearsals, Jonah came to me like literally the night before we started shooting, and he's like, you know, I think I figured out the way this guy laughs. And, you know, he did that laugh for me that's so creepy in the movie, but also like, I don't know, just kind of beautiful. And I was like, that's it, you know, like, I love that. And even with Bradley, I think we had talked a long time about Henry and back and forth, and I'd sent him a photo of those glasses, and I said, you know, what if it's this? And I really feel like that helped you kind of connect with the guy. So
Yeah, he's farsighted.
he's farsighted.
It was. I was like, oh, yeah. And I was thinking, like, you know, at one time, he probably looked kind of handsome and okay, you know, many years ago. You know, but he's still trying to keeps the look what he thinks looks good. But, you know, his eyes are bloodshot. He can't see anymore.
Yeah.
He's probably been shot 8 times. You know, I don't know. Then he became a really interesting character.
I'm curious, and it's because you're in the scene as well. How did the final scene in the movie sort of come about? Like, it's open-ended. Half the people in this audience probably think he took the money. The other half probably think he didn't. Where did that come from in the writing process, and why did you want to make it the final scene?
Well, you know, honestly, it's funny. You make a movie 3 times. You know, you write a movie, you direct a movie, and then you edit the movie. And so him not knowing if he took the money or not, quite frankly, didn't come about till the editing. In the script, we had it went a little bit further. And then we started screening it. It just sort of felt a little bit clean the way we ended it. So we ended up just cutting the scene there. And again, the last time you make a movie is in the editing room. It's really your final draft of the screenplay. And that was a decision that didn't come about till the editing room. But to me, I mean, it's so clear he took the money. I don't even think it's that up in the air. But that's just me speaking.
Is it?
Really? I didn't think he took it.
Like,
Is
of
it?
course
He took the money?
Of course.
Okay.
Like, it's crazy. Why wouldn't he take the money?
I don't know. I think it's a little open-ended.
That's what I thought. Can we talk about? You talked a little bit about Jonah.
It is
Can
a
you
lot of money.
It is a lot of money. It would be hard not. Can we talk about Miles coming on board and playing David? And what about him? Did you think he was perfect for the role and what he brought to it?
Well, you know, we really wrote the movie with Jonah in mind. I mean, from the minute I read the article, I was really thinking about Jonah Hill. And, you know, Jonah's one of these actors, no matter what he's doing, whether it's Superbad or Moneyball, he just vibrates on screen. I mean, he's just electric, and your eye always goes to him, or my eye always goes to him when I see him in a scene. So I'd been wanting to work with Jonah for a long time. We wrote this script for Jonah, and when Jonah finally came on board, it was really about finding an effective counterpunch to Jonah, somebody that, we watched the movie through the eyes of Miles' character, David. He had to be sympathetic. He had to be grounded. I mean, we go on his journey. And Miles just, I had worked with Miles in a small capacity on a movie that I produced, Project X. We had gotten to know each other, and he just felt like the right guy. So I called him up, and it was pretty straightforward. I sent him the script, but I just thought them together seemed like a great balance.
And how hard was it to convince Jonah to come on board? Since you needed him at the beginning, was he
he
reticent at all?
I mean, I've been chasing Jonah Hill weirdly for a long time. we asked Jonah to be in The Hangover. This is not like a thing to play the Zach part. I've said this before, but the Zach's part was originally we wrote it as the younger brother that they bring along on the bachelor party, and Jonah didn't want to do it. I got it, and we ended up rewriting it as an older brother, and we got Zach Galifianakis. But so Jonah's somebody I'd always been wanting to work with, and on this movie he had just finished Wolf of Wall Street, and I think when I handed him the script, and he was a little nervous about his character being too close to Donnie, and quite frankly, in those early drafts it might have been, and we went back and we reworked it because he really loved the story, and we went back, we reworked his character a little bit. I remember sitting down with him and talking about it, why it's different, the character's different than Donnie, and that was it. But it's a thing. I mean, when you're making a movie, I think always said that casting is 75% of making a movie. You cast the right actors, and they do so much of the heavy lifting for you. So casting is such a key part, and when you get dead set on somebody in particular, it's tough to let go of.
Just out of curiosity, I'm guessing you did not shoot in Romania, or did you actually?
No, the movie takes place in Albania.
Sorry, Albania.
But
apologies.
we did shoot in Romania.
See, got it wrong. Sorry, guys. I saw it like 2 weeks ago.
No, this is one of those movies, weirdly, we shot in Jordan, we shot in Morocco, we shot in Romania, we shot in Miami, we shot in Las Vegas, we shot in El Centro. It's one of those movies where I just feel like when you're making a movie about chaos, I mean, often a lot of my movies end up to be about mayhem or chaos. And I feel like the more chaotic it can feel on set, that always finds its way into the film. You got a call? So
I've got questions.
It's easy. So when you have the choice to travel the world and do that and hit the ground running, half your crew is jet lagged, the actors are jet lagged. There's a real chaotic feel on the set that I always feel like finds its way into the film. It did it for us in Hangover 2, certainly. And I think it just adds this element that it's hard to direct in a way. It's hard to create.
Totally understand. Again, if you want to send any questions, please #AskAlamo. And I'm going to take the first one. Buddy Calvo asks, War Dogs was cool, good, solid flick, very interesting. What's your next joint effort?
Why don't you take that?
Well, we're developing a couple of things, so nothing's.
You should talk about the thing you're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're good.
We're really bad at this because our nature is to be very discreet. We don't like talking about stuff. But Bradley might direct a movie.
Right, yeah. It looks like we're going to do A Star is Born.
Yeah.
Which is
Bradley's going to direct.
Thank you. So that's really exciting, and we'll see. Yeah.
And we have a couple TV things we're working on.
Okay. And by the way, the report was it was greenlit. So does that mean it happens,
that's
or
what I
like?
mean, it's not really a secret anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wasn't assuming it was. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess it's gonna. Yeah, I got to make it now.
You got to make it up. I don't know how to say this person's name, but they said you mentioned adherence to story was that important during the process. Yeah, I didn't write this question. Yeah. Was that important during the process, the balance of drama, comedy, and realism? Did you want to make sure it was as entertaining, obviously, as historical?
To me, I didn't think about comedy versus drama in that way of like saying, well, it's got to be. To me, we were trying to make a movie about real life. And I feel like real life, how many days do you have that are purely dramatic, or how many days do you have that are purely comedic? It feels to me like real life is a mixture of drama and comedy. So it wasn't so much of me going like, whoa, this is dramatic, and people know I do comedies, I better make it funny. It just felt like it mimicked the tone of real life most succinctly if you balance those things.
Yeah. Smashly Ashley asks, I only report, is there a scene in the movie that you're the most proud of? For either of you.
I mean, you want to talk about that?
I mean, watching the movie last night at the premiere, I just I was amazed by him as a director before I met him, and then obviously doing 3 movies. But I just love the opening in the movie. Is just you just know there's a great feeling when you're watching a movie. In the first couple moments, you can just relax and think, oh, I'm in great hands, and that's the way I felt when this movie starts. You just think, oh yeah, when we go to Miles, smoking the weed and I mean, it's just so great. And then you see War Dogs, the title, just the way he can combine music, shot selection, acting. I mean, he has a style that's very unique and it's very Todd Phillips, and that makes me feel very happy.
What was it again?
The question was there a scene that you were particularly proud of?
I mean, not necessarily a scene in particular. I mean, there are sequences that are more fun to shoot. The stuff in Iraq was really fun to shoot. We did not shoot in Iraq. But, I just like that mixture of tension and a little action.
The gas station is pretty
That's what
wonderful.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That was a really fun sequence to shoot, but it's not necessarily like I'm proud of one scene over another necessarily.
Speaking of locations, you talked about shooting all over the world. What was the hardest location to shoot in? That question is from Film Credits 101.
Morocco was tough just because the infrastructure isn't there as much as it might be in certain places. I mean, I said we didn't shoot in Albania, but the reason we didn't shoot in Albania was because they really don't have a film infrastructure there, and Romania does. Morocco kind of does. People shoot in Morocco. That was a little bit of a challenging location. Again, you kind of landing on a plane and we literally shooting the next day. We didn't shoot a ton of, we shot all over the place, but we did this.
Surprisingly, a lot of movies are shot in Morocco.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, we might have had the B crew, but that was a tough place to shoot. But the thing is, even though we shot all over the world, it was kind of a small budget, relatively speaking, as far as studio movies go. So we didn't shoot a ton of days. We just we spent a lot of time traveling, and so when you'd land in Morocco, you'd be shooting the next day. And I don't know where we shot in Morocco. They didn't seem to understand what an orange cone meant. So you could put up all the orange cones you want at the end of the street. They're just driving over them. So.
Actually, this question I think for both you guys. It's Mao Mao wants to know, do you guys consider your protagonists heroes or anti-heroes?
You want me to take that?
Yeah, take it.
I mean, I watch the movie and I think that, and a lot of people go back and forth with that I've spoken to are on either side, but I don't see it as an indictment on these two characters, really. I see it really as an indictment on the U.S. government and sort of their willingness to look the other way when they get a good deal. And Bradley says in the movie, he says, the government wants to look the other way, don't give them a reason not to. So to me, it's more of an indictment on that and their process than it would be necessarily on Ephraim and David. So I look at those guys, I kind of still think they're awesome at the end of the movie. But I don't know, I have a skewed vision also.
I just went back to film class and that was an actual question. It was no, it's the anti-hero. The definition actually, I guess it would be the anti-hero.
Oh, is it?
I think so.
So
we can just Google.
Did I answer it wrong?
You did, yeah.
Speaking of this, though, I'm actually curious if you guys even know this. Are these exchanges that they were using to create their company? Are they still there? Are companies still going in and doing these small business?
It still
bidding?
exists. You can literally go on that website, fedbizops.gov, and it still exists. You can still. There might be better oversight. They might have changed the oversight process, but you can literally still do that.
Oh wow. That seems scary.
Yeah.
Another question for you guys is Russell Cooper wants to know, Bradley, what was it like working with Miles and Jonah?
Oh, it was awesome. I was a huge fan of Jonah's and friend of Jonah's for years, and Cyrus was a movie that blew me away, and his performance. So I was so elated when he finally decided to do it and come aboard. Miles, I love from Rabbit Hole. I don't know if you guys remember his role in Rabbit Hole. He was incredible in that. And I remember thinking, who is this guy? And then he did Todd's movie and obviously Whiplash. So I was really excited to work with both of them. And it's always fun, sometimes unnerving to come onto a set after there's already been a chemistry established and a rhythm. Sometimes it could be wonderful, or you feel like you're like jumping in a river that's moving so fast. And it felt sort of seamless when I was able to come to Vegas and shoot those scenes. And it was a ball to see what these guys had come up with. You know, I'm just sitting across the table and just sort of watching them. And I really enjoyed the last scene with Miles at the end of the movie, too. That was a lot of fun.
This question is for you, Todd. Baron Rossborough asks, what do you think the use... This is a pretty, like, film school question. What do you think the use of voiceover brings to the narrative?
Well, I think, you know, it's certainly not the first time it's been done. It's used when it's used effectively, I think there's nothing like it. And what I really think it brings to you is, well, two things. There's internal monologue that happens in books, for example, that's sometimes harder to convey in a movie. And when you're doing a movie where the scope and the span is sort of jumping all over the place, it's a nice check-in part, a nice sort of check-in moments with your character. But also the idea of, like I said, since we're watching the movie through Miles's eyes, it's something that kind of makes you attach yourself to him in a I don't know in what way, but
In an endearing way.
It's an endearing way. It connects the audience to him.
He also has a great voice. Some people just do and don't. And I just, you know, his voice, it's a perfect voiceover voice.
Yeah, it's true. But so I don't know. I think it's really additive, and it really, for a movie like this, again, that jumps that kind of time and is telling a story that is kind of all over the place. It really, I had never used it before in a movie. I had used it in documentaries, but never in a movie. And it was really a liberating thing to have and to kind of lean on when you had to lean on it, and you're always rewriting it and always tweaking it.
It's a tricky thing also. I think it takes a steady hand to be able to calibrate it, because you can overdo it and then lose the tension. That's what I always think, that it could be a real... Yeah. It could really... You could feel so safe because you're with the character that you don't think anything bad's going to happen. Right. But obviously American Beauty threw that, you know, out the window.
One actor that we had not mentioned is the, I'm going to pronounce her name wrong, Ana de Armas.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
And I just saw she's going to be in the Blade Runner sequel, too.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, did she just come in an audition? Had you seen her in something else? Like, how did you bring her on board?
I had, she had come in and auditioned cold. John Papsadera, who's the casting director, is like, you got to meet this girl.
And her audition was great.
But I still wasn't sure because she hadn't done a lot. And then Eli Roth, he's a filmmaker who I know and am friendly with, and he had used her in this movie Knock Knock, just had finished Knock Knock. And he called me up and he's like, I just want to tell you this girl is an absolute killer. She's fantastic. And we brought her back in. I mean, I loved her from the beginning, but you're just never sure. And you just kind of like when there's a little bit more of a body of work you can look at, whatever. But she was just great, and she just felt like the right girl. And her eyes are just like unbelievable.
Yeah, I thought she was fantastic. Thanks. Question: Esther Cavazos asks, "What would you guys have done if you were in this situation in real life?"
Real quick, I just want to chime in. I thought all the actors in Albania were incredible too. Those guys. I thought all those small character parts were fantastic.
Yeah, that was the other benefit. I'll just say, not to ignore Esther.
Sure.
We're getting right back to you, Esther.
About shooting on locations, being in Morocco, being in Jordan, being in Romania, you get to cast all those smaller parts locally, and it adds so much to a film's authenticity and the vibe and the reality. And not only the people that speak, but all the background. You know, when Jonah's walking through that airport and he's going, I have to go first, I'm American. We were in Rabat, Morocco. And so all those extras would be, all those faces that are regular in Rabat, to find them here, if you're shooting it in the Ontario airport up north, it's so much more difficult. So there's such an authenticity when you're on location, just with the background faces and the other actors. It's really amazing.
I'm just curious, when you guys shot that scene, having interviewed Jonah a couple times. I know they're all actors, and they know he was all joking, but that's like a really rough thing to say in a foreign country. Do you remember shooting that at all? And like,
oh yeah, no, I remember it. And the thing is, you sort of, you're all there for the movie. It's not really. I mean, it's really an airport, but we're owning that whole section, so they're all on board with it. It's really only those 8 people around him that hear that line. So there was only those 8 people I had to go and just go.
He had it easy. I had to say a horrible line, screaming it in Hangover 1 in a neighborhood, paging Dr. Somebody.
Yeah, it still gives me chills.
Oh my God!
We're like in the middle of West Hollywood.
It was crazy.
Not cool. It's not cool.
Oh my God!
We might
do it again. Wait, how many times is he screaming it?
It's true. That was way worse. We might go back and change that.
Just to go back to Esther's question, what would you guys have done if you were in this situation?
Well, I know what he would have done.
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
I still might do it.
That exchange still up. There's time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, it's great. I don't,
It could be like, day stock trading. You could just like go on for a couple hours, do
Yeah.
the rest of your job.
To me, it still
He
seems
may
like,
be doing it. You never know with this
right.
guy. He knew the site was still up.
Yeah. No, I mean, would you? I mean,
No,
as
of course not.
You wouldn't have done.
No.
Macris Soul Crusher, that's his name, wants to know, why did you choose to add chapters to the movie?
Again, it was just when you're making a movie, you have many tools with which to kind of paint, whether it's music and wardrobe and locations and cinematography. And the chapters was something we discovered in the editing. Again, the story took these massive time jumps, and people do them in movies all the time, and they don't do that. But there was something I felt, there's like a lean-in quality to those chapter headings where you do a line that's upcoming, and somebody's like, shit, everything's going really well. How's that going to happen once they kind of catch up to what we're doing with it? I don't know. It just felt like a very kind of lean-in moment to me. And weirdly, I had done a documentary literally 20 years ago called Frat House, and we did that in Frat House, and thank you. And that's what I took it from. I took it from that. We did those in Frat House, and I was like, we're sitting in the editing room, and we're just kind of messing around with locating these time jumps and how to identify them. And I was like, we should do this thing that I'd done in Frat House, and we just started doing it.
I would have thought it was in the script. That's sort of like...
No.
So, do you find most of your movies in the editing room? Do you feel like you make a lot of changes from like when you shoot and
Yeah, I think everybody does, and that's what I meant. Like, you make a movie 3 times, and the last time you make it is in the editing room, but it's a drastic time, just as drastic as the first writing. So yeah.
So when you saw the first rough edit, and I don't know how early you got in to see it, how different was it from what you had remembered from the screenplay?
He is somebody that's very methodical in every stage of the process. So actually, it was very much what I thought it would be. And it did not. After that first cut, there were minor tweaks. There weren't major shifts after that. Because he really absolutely explores every avenue in each stage. And not every director is like that.
And we take a long time editing. Like, we really take our time with editing. Editing, I don't know how many people here make movies or make films, but editing is everything. It's like I always say, directing is the price you pay to get to the editing room, because directors by very nature are control freaks, and really, you don't really control anything until you're in the editing room, and that's where it's just like, here we go.
So is the director's your worst nightmare, those situations where the studio's like, we have to get it out by Christmas. You've got 5 weeks to edit. Does that freak you out?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, for a movie like this, it's not a superhero movie with a release date that's hard and fast. I will say, like, the Hangover movies were tricky because we always had this sort of Memorial Day release date, and we never finished that. We would be shooting them up until basically New Year's Day. So that was a much faster turnaround than I've ever done on movies. But for some reason, we just were doing those movies like that. But this didn't have that kind of hard and fast out date. So they let us just take our time, and we spent a lot more time editing this movie than I've ever spent editing a movie.
Bradley, a question for you. I know you talked earlier about the glasses and getting Henry as a character, but Chris Lehman wants to know, what does it take for you to get into character? Do you do research, or, this is his question, do you just wing it?
Everything is whatever it takes for the role for you to, as James Cagney said, say what you mean and mean what you say. As long whatever one has to do, what I have to do to believe that what I'm saying, for me to believe absolutely what I'm saying, and it means different things for different roles. Quite frankly, Chris Kyle, because I was playing a real human being, took a tremendous amount of research to do justice to who he was, because there's a living, breathing embodiment of that character, and there's so much out there to research. Somebody like Pat Solitano from Silver Linings Playbook I did a ton of work with the director, who it was a very personal story to him with his son. And then, I followed his lead. With this character, it was much more about Todd and I collaborating, throwing ideas around and seeing what sticks. But, sometimes I remember talking to a great, great actor who had done like 3 movies in a row, and talking about how he didn't really have time to prepare for the third one. And the third one I thought was the best movie of last year, and it was probably the best performance he's ever given. And I saw him afterwards, and I said, Well, he's like, yeah, I just showed up, but sometimes the machine is greased and you just flow. It's like an athlete playing or a musician playing an instrument. So sometimes you're able to be so out of your head that you're just running on instinct. And if you're talented, it can really just come through.
That's great. Question for you, Todd. Are there any movies that directly influence the style of War Dogs?
I mean, there's actually a ton. I watch a ton of movies, like probably everybody in this room. So it's not like it's a specific film. Obviously, you can make comparisons. Not that I'm comparing myself to Martin Scorsese, but I'm saying the idea of voiceover, he kind of owns it in the last 20 years. Goodfellas is one of the greatest movies of all time. So, I was just reading today somebody comparing it in that way of going, oh, you borrow a little from that, and we certainly do. And tonally, I think we borrow from a guy who Bradley works with a few times, who's one of the greatest, David O. Russell, who I think does that balance I was talking about earlier about how real life is drama and comedy. I think he does it almost better than anybody. So I can't say there's like one thing we looked at and said that's the thing, but I also can't say that stuff doesn't find its way into the process.
You can't not. I think that's the exciting part about watching movies for me. You're watching Boogie Nights and you're watching the Alfred Molina scene, and I loved LaHaine, so then you're thinking, oh, that reminds me of the scene, and that's the kind of joy of films.
One of the things I love about the movie is, as entertaining as it is, it really, and I feel like we have barely talked about this, is there's a political message here about sort of what happened to these guys and about how easy it was for them to go in and do this, and what those guns can be doing, sort of across the world. How important as a filmmaker was it to you to sort of tackle this as sort of a film?
I mean, again, I didn't tackle it because of the issue, but the issue was really intriguing to me in a real way. I mean, I tackled it like, look, I make movies about guys who make bad decisions. That seems to be what I do. That's my thing. I don't understand it either, but that's what I do. And in the other movies, like in The Hangover with these guys, the bad decisions that they would make would bring them closer together. And in this film, it kind of pulls them apart. And that was the compelling thing. But you can't ignore the idea that there's something really going on underneath it that has real impact. And the more heartbreaking thing about the impact of this is that when that guy calls at the end of the movie from the New York Times, they wind up on the cover of the New York Times in 2008, and all of a sudden now there's a Senate hearing about it, even though the Pentagon full on knew that you can't source 100 million rounds of AK ammunition in the middle of a worldwide drought after 2 Iraq wars. They knew they were going to source this in a nefarious way, but until the New York Times uncovered it, did they not sort of have egg on their face and they kind of let these guys take the fall? It's not something you can ignore, and it's a big part of it for sure. I was going somewhere else with that, but I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. But did that answer?
Yeah, no, that absolutely answered the question.
Okay.
And I think that's what's great about the movie is that this story people will hear about this story and know that these things are still sort of going on. And
yeah, and I think there have been a lot of movies made about war, and there have been a lot of movies made about soldiers and patriotism and sort of the amazing service that they do. But there hadn't been a ton of movies that I've ever seen about the obscene amount of money that a very small group of people make off of war. And I just thought, to shine a light on that, just talking about the political statement of it, that to me was kind of really important.
I totally agree. Can you please give a big round of applause for Todd and Bradley for taking the time tonight? And thanks all of you in the theaters across the country for joining us.
Thanks, guys.